It's another Tuesday, so you know what that means, Hawks fans. It's time for another Hawks Nest podcast episode, and this time we've got another special guest. It's Shane Nelson, Boise Hawks athletic trainer, who joined me earlier this week to talk about what it's like to deal with a locker room full of players trying to perform at the highest level every single night, but also talking about the rigorous travel schedule that goes into it, the nutrition, the sleep, and all the sports science and studies that needs to be done to make sure the Boise Hawks are out on the field performing to their very best every single evening. So without further ado, here's episode 2 of the Hawks Nest podcast featuring Shane Nelson. Welcome back to another episode of the Hawks Nest podcast. This week, very special guest, the man behind the scenes to make sure all the athletes get out on the field. Shane Nelson, the Boise Hawks athletic trainer, joins me. Shane, so happy to have you along. Excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So the first question I want to ask you is, as an Iowa City native, how did you end up getting all the way out here to Boise?
Well, baseball is kind of a strange world to work in, and been moving around a lot. I guess my story, I started as an intern in AAA Iowa in 2010. I went to a Division III small college in southern Iowa that was about 2 hours from Des Moines. And I interned there in 2010 and then was hired by the Cubs in 2011. So I worked rookie ball, A ball, like low A, double A, triple A. And then I took a year off from baseball. Gary called me about starting a baseball program at Boise State University. I had never worked baseball in college, not at the Division I level, just a little bit when I was a student. Got an opportunity to come here to basically help Gary and all the guys get that program started. With COVID-19, everything kind of got thrown around, and the program got cut in July of last year. And so I was fortunate enough to stay on at Boise State, got to help get some of the guys transitioned out to the next places, that they were going. And then I got a call probably 2 months ago now from St. Luke's Sports Medicine, and they said, hey, we're looking to partner with the Hawks. A couple people have recommended you, are you interested? And, so we kind of talked things through, and that worked out to where I can sign on with St. Luke's and then get outsourced here. So basically just been following jobs through baseball, and it's led me out here, and that's how I got here.
And so you started with the Cubs, you mentioned, as an intern,
Mm-hmm.
and starting at the AAA level, that's pretty high up. Obviously, in the world of athletic training, things are a bit different. As someone who gets drafted and started as rookie ball, you maybe don't have to rise your way through the ranks. But what was it like working in a AAA clubhouse from day one, and what were the expectations of you, and how did you work with your other trainers to make sure everyone got out on the field and made sure you took care of the injuries?
The clubhouse when I started as an intern was there were a lot of veteran players, a lot of guys that had been to the big leagues and back, some prospects that were coming up, and the clubhouse atmosphere was very, old school professional baseball. And it, my only experience besides that was working at a Division III school, and so just to see the level of professionalism and going about day in and day out as this being their job and their career was really interesting. I think there were pretty high expectations back then. The guy I worked for was awesome, but he was very, I don't want to say strict, but very just like regimented in what he did, and taught me, so much about understanding that this is a business and going about things professionally and holding yourself and the players to a high standard, and just understanding that, we went out and represented the Chicago Cubs on a daily basis. And I don't know, it was a huge difference then going to rookie ball the next year. Like you were saying, you get kids out of high school or college that come in just drafted. Some guys get signed for millions of dollars. Some guys get a little bit lower signing bonuses. They're starting to realize their dreams. They're finding out what professional baseball is all about. And so just to see the juxtaposition of guys that maybe are towards the end of their career or kind of on that back and forth of big leagues to minor leagues and AAA, and then the next year going and working with guys that are just starting was just an incredible comparison. Very, very different. And the way that my career worked out with the Cubs, I got to kind of rise the ranks with a lot of the same guys, which was really neat to see. You got to see them develop from young kids who were just like touching pro ball for the first time to making, their full season debut, and then going to Double-A, getting excited about calling up, and then getting to see them make their major league debut. And whether that was in AAA when we got to tell them, hey, you're going to the big leagues for the first time, or seeing their debut on TV and having it in the clubhouse, and really promoting that, like, just an awesome experience. And just the timing of it with the Cubs worked out so well that I got to like move up in kind of the same pace as a lot of those guys, which was, I think, a pretty unique experience.
And your familiarity with Gary when he brought you on with the Boise State program, that was kind of born from your experience with the Cubs.
Yeah.
Because you two, while not ever really in the same league working together, I'm sure you met a couple times at spring training and things like that. And did that help you land the job?
Yeah, when Gary called me about coming to Boise State, I was trying to remember the first time I met him, and I can't really put a time on it. It would have been in spring training, probably my first year in 2010. Gary and I, like you said, never worked the same team together for a full season. But anyone that's gone through spring training and what that's like, day in and day out, like it's like a massive family reunion. That's all day, every day, and you get to see every player in the organization, every coach in the organization. Most of the front office comes down. And so initially it's really cool to see everyone because, you spend 6-8 weeks working with them in the weeks leading up to spring training and through spring training, and then you might not get to see these players and coaches, the rest of the year unless you come back in instructional league or maybe something in the winter. And so that's kind of how my relationship with Gary is that got to see each other in spring training, share the same clubhouse, we're on the same field and stuff. And then, we'd take, 8-month hiatus and then pick right back up where we started. So as far as working together one-on-one, I think Gary and I both do our homework really well. And so when Gary was calling me and asking me, like, hey, are you interested in this? Like, I'm calling my friends that worked with him, and I was like, hey, what's Gary like? What's Gary like as a manager? How is he to work with? And I know Gary's doing the same thing, calling the different athletic trainers that he had worked with. And, hey, what do you got on Shane? What do you think? Is he going to fit in with this? How? And, there's this mutual respect, too, in that we both came through kind of the same program with the Cubs, and the organization and the family and the just kind of common mindset that I feel like the minor league organization had is something that we can both share. And I'd say on a daily basis we'll reference players that we used to have, or we'll reference, things that we've been through collectively in the organization, or different, like the other day when I first started with the Cubs, the players were all required to wear their pants up. They all had to have like socks high, and it was just an organizational thing. And Gary and I were kind of laughing about that, the other day, of just like, hey, do you remember when we had to do that? And so just that shared experience and understanding that even though we weren't at the same affiliate ever, be in the same organization around the same time, working with the same players, coaches, the overlap. There's definitely like this common understanding between us.
Right, that mutual understanding, and something that some people may not understand at the AAA level, especially for an athletic trainer like yourself. Everyone talks about the glitz and glam of the big leagues, being in a different city every night, and it's kind of the same in the AAA level. You play your 3-game or 4-game series, and then you depart. You catch an early flight, or sometimes you have to bus, depending on the organization and the travel schedule. But for an athletic trainer like yourself, you're talking about sleep schedules. You're talking about maintaining injuries with long flights. I mean, it kind of makes your life miserable, and the fans may not understand that every night that, they might get into a city at 2 o'clock that day, roll in for batting practice around 5. I mean, what is it like to be at that level, and how difficult is it to come out prepared to play every day for these players?
I think if you ask any player that's gone through the PCL, the Pacific Coast League, I think it's got to be one of the hardest because of the travel. I never worked in the international league, so that's the other AAA league in affiliated baseball. But like you were saying, we would either fly or take like an overnight bus. The league would have us take the first flight out in case there were any delays or anything, so that we can get the games in time. You play every day. I mean, you play every single day for the most part, and the days that you're not playing are typically travel days. So we might be in Memphis, Tennessee, and play a 7 o'clock game, and say it goes 3 hours. It's 10 o'clock, and we're packing up the clubhouse, get back to the hotel 1 a.m., and then we have a 6 a.m. flight out to Omaha, Nebraska, right? And so we'll head to the airport 4:30, 5 a.m., unloading the bus, getting the equipment sent over. The players are rolling in, hopping on the plane. Not really any direct flights in the PCL, so then we're going, maybe Memphis to Chicago, Chicago to Omaha. You might get into Omaha at noon, but the hotel's check-in isn't till 3 o'clock or so, and they do a really good job of trying to move that check-in time up, but inevitably you still have some rooms that aren't ready, and so by the time the whole team gets in, it might be 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You got a game at 7 o'clock that night, so if you can sleep for an hour, maybe you do that, and then you run over to the stadium and you're getting like the medical equipment unpacked, you're getting all the baseball gear unpacked, jerseys hung up, laundry washed, the whole 9 yards. And then the players show up and they got to get, shake the cobwebs off from sleeping 4 hours and being on, 2 flights that day. And just the amount of work that goes into the entire travel from an athletic trainer standpoint, from the operations, people that work. In Iowa, I was fortunate enough to work with Randy, who is our radio broadcaster at the time. He's the general manager there, and one of the best I've ever gotten to work with. He helped me out so much with travel and flights and, just little things that would come up, taking care of that, being an extra set of hands. It's just this whole all hands on deck to take care of that travel. And at the end of the day, like, once the game starts, I get to kind of unwind and I don't have to go out and perform. Like, that's the thing I would try to remind myself of is, holy smokes, you go through a day like that and you're feeling awful, and I don't have to go out and try to hit 95 miles an hour. I don't have to go, sprint down to first base and all of that. And so it's just amazing what these guys are able to do day in and day out. And at these levels too, where we're busing, it's not that much better. Sometimes we'll have really long bus rides, and then you get in really early in the morning. You have to play that night, and I think like we have built-in off days on Tuesday, which is gonna, I think, be amazing for our guys to be able to get just a little bit more rest, get their legs back under them, things like that. But it's just incredible what these players are able to do day in and day out. And like I said, and the amount of work that the people in the front office at these affiliates and the travel partners and just the whole behind the scenes, process of getting a team in and out of a city for their 3-4 games and on to the next. So
I think the longest bus ride this year that the Boise Hawks will take will be to Grand Junction, Colorado, the team that they're currently playing here at home as we open the homestand. But that's almost 11 hours on a bus, and one day you're eating up half your day, depending on when you leave at 7 a.m. in the morning here from Boise, you're getting in at 7 p.m. at night, and likely on that Tuesday off day. And that's the one thing I wanted to ask you about as well here in the Pioneer League. With that Tuesday off day, it's very different because in the PCL, sometimes you get the rainouts, you get the delays early in the season, you're playing double headers, you scratch your off days. I mean, for these guys to go out and compete, you see it a lot. How much do you have to deal with as an athletic trainer when you've got 30 games in 31 days?
It's a lot, and ideally we're able to get out ahead of it and do as much kind of preventative and recovery work as we can. I think the best thing is educating the guys on ways that they can take care of themselves, help themselves out, getting good sleep, good nutrition, controlling what they can control. We can't control a 10, 12-hour bus ride, but the days leading up to it, if you have the option to maybe get home earlier, get some extra sleep, making sure that your nutrition's locked in, that the options are there for healthier meals, that your calories are there. Gary and I were just talking this morning about our plan the next 3 or 4 days on how we want to manage the workload for the guys, like leading into these next couple of games. I think that's one thing that's overlooked by just the general fan, is that when you play every day, it takes away from your ability to practice. So we're trying to get practice in before our games, whether that's batting practice, doing infield, outfield work, things that come up in the game the night before. Gary does a great job of coaching and having, the situation where, hey, let's go through this situation, let's practice, let's go through that. But then you got to play that night, right? And so there's this like happy medium of when do we give the guys the time to relax, recover, regenerate, and then when do you try to hit it harder on the field to where you can get some work out of that extra time you have before the game. That's one of the things with, I think the old school approach to baseball was very much like practice, play that night. One of the things we saw when like Joe Madden came in was he was very big about, hey, let's relax, let's recover. There were days that, he would lock the clubhouse door, say, hey, we're just going to show up, hit in the cage, and go play. Basically forcing the guys to take a break, relax. And so, yeah, it's just kind of trying to manage and balance that. And like I said, control what you can about this. On days that, hey, I'm hanging a little bit, like, let's be a little bit more proactive. Come see me. I got a whole room of fun toys and gadgets to try to help you, bounce back. And so, it's just a matter of trying to stay on top of it and not get behind the 8 ball. Because when you start having the injuries and stuff and you're playing catch up, like, that's what makes it kind of tough on the player and on us as a medical staff.
And it's got to be a huge departure for you. I know you didn't get a lot of games with Boise State in 2020, but you play a 4 or 3 game series over just one weekend, and then you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday before you're finally flying out again. I mean, what's the biggest difference for you personally with the professional schedule compared to the college schedule that you got to experience?
To be honest, the biggest difference was the idea that a starting pitcher pitches once a week and not once every 5 days. There was a lot of talk between me, the strength and conditioning coach, and our pitching staff about, like, how do we work this routine out to where in pro ball it's every 5 days. It's every 5 days. You have your 5-man rotation, whereas, like you were saying, in college, you basically set it up your Friday night starter, your Saturday, your Sunday, and that kind of 7-day routine, it was new for me. It's not, something I've never really had to work with and be a part of, and so figuring that out was probably the biggest difference on a pitching standpoint. Not playing every day, yeah, that was, and granted, we played 14 games, and there were some with the schedule and kind of strange, but and Gary, to his credit, when we were at Boise State, was trying to get a schedule that was a little bit more reminiscent of playing every day, so that you don't have like the cobwebs to shake out and all that. And so we started our season a little bit later, I think, than most people. He tried to fill a lot of midweek games to get more of that kind of schedule that maybe we were familiar with, and I think it would have been really interesting to see how that shook out, because that design gave us more time in January, February to work with our pitching staff, to get them built up for the games and things like that we would have in pro ball with the winter and spring training that you don't necessarily have in college because of the winter break. And that was one thing that was tough too, I guess, is you spend all this time in the fall and leading up to winter break working with your guys, being one-on-one or in small groups, and then they go home for 4 to 6 weeks, and you're just hoping that everything that you've worked on, they just keep rolling. But to come back and have just a couple weeks to work with them before the season starts, I think that was a little bit different too.
Well, Shane, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate learning about the insides of the athletic training world, and appreciate you sharing your story.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.